Hello, I'm Dommy Clark. Welcome to the workshop. The next stage in the installation of my DRO is to do the Y-axis. I've picked the Y-axis because looking at the X-axis and the Y-axis, I think the Y-axis is actually going to be the more difficult one to do. So I thought, well, I'll get that one out of the way first. I'm going to swing the machine round just to show you the position the scale is going to go on the Y-axis, and show you how tight an area it is to fit it in. Now, bear with me a moment and I'll just swing the mill round and change the camera position. This is where the scales are going to have to fit. I'm going to fit the scale onto the base of the mill, put a bracket at each end of the base. The reader will be attached here so that the reader will actually ride along as you're moving the Y-axis across. And what I'll have to do is bring a bracket from this part down behind the scale onto the reader, so that can then slide along. I know some people mount it the other way up and have the scale mounted on the base, and then the reader actually attached directly to the Y-axis, so that will ride along that way. But the problem is then it leaves this channel open here for swarf to fall into the scale itself. And then the sort of difficulty of actually getting a cover over the top. So I'm opting to do it this way round, and you'll see that the fit into here, it's going to be very, very tight. And when this milling machine is very, very small, so there's obviously not a lot of room to do anything here. I've got to arrange it so that I can raise it up slightly so that the base of the reader clears this part of the base of the milling machine. It's not going to be easy to do because I looked at sort of, getting a drill and tap into here. So obviously I've got to remove the handle here, probably remove the covers here to get them out of the way. So it's, whichever way you look at it, it's going to be a bit of a squeeze, but I think it's going to be possible to do. The one other problem is that obviously I'm going to have a plate here to mount this end of the scale onto, and the other one will fall around here. If you can see that okay, the base of the column actually overlaps the base here. So a part of it's going to have to be machined away on the actual bracket I'm going to put on the base. But I think it's going to be possible to accomplish this. So the other problem will also be because of the limited amount of room, is getting the guard in position as well. I think what I'm going to have to do is what I did with the Z-axis, was actually reduce this depth here. What I did on the Z-axis was cut through here and then overlap that part onto here just to make that bit narrower, so that will easily fit under here. I think that's going to be possible. May need a bit of jiggling around to do, but I think that can be accomplished. What I did also, it comes with plastic covers that go on the top and bottom here. I found that just by cutting the plastic covers down, that I could actually make them fit back on again, and that they would just sort of squeeze into place. So, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. Anyway, now you see the problems I'm faced with this, but I think it's going to work out okay. I won't be able to film very much of the actual installation because I really want to reserve all my concentration for the actual install of the scale, so that I don't make any mistakes really. But if there are any bits of this that I could film along the way, I will do, and bring that along at the end of this video. Anyway, wish me luck. To help me set up the scale for the Y-axis, I've made two blocks to be mounted at each end. There's a bit machined out here to clear the overlap of the column of the mill, so that will fit snugly into place. The fixing's just one screw at each end, so that I've got some wiggle room to adjust it when I clock in the surface here, and a couple of holes here to attach these blocks to the base of the milling machine. To help me set all of this up, I've mounted this rail firmly to the bench with a couple of clamps, so this will sort of simulate the base of the milling machine, so that I can hold these blocks against this piece of metal here. To give me some spacing here, I used a couple of parallels just in here, so that I could adjust this to give me the correct position. I'm mounting the scale itself to the machine, which will be fixed, and as I move the Y movement, this will move the carriage along, and I've cut down one of these angle plates, the one which had some threaded holes in it, but what I've had to do is drill out the bottom two here for clearance screws, so the screws will come up through here and go into these threaded holes in the reader, so that will be mounted down the back. There will be a spacer between this plate. I've made some spacers here which will go over there and give me the right sort of spacing below. This seemed to be the sort of easiest way to set this up. Obviously I can take this over to the milling machine and offer it up to the milling machine just to make sure everything's correct. I've marked on the scale here the two extreme positions that the reader will cover, so that I can adjust the reader itself, so that the reader actually starts a little bit in from that end position. And I've put, as I've seen a number of people setting these up, two thin pieces of cardboard between the scale and the reader to give up the position here. I've temporarily held these two bits together with a cable tie, but I can't leave that on while I actually attach this, because the cable tie on this side will interfere with the plate I'm mounting it to. So I'm going to sort of fabricate a little clamp the clamp across here to hold that firmly in position while I actually attach this to the milling machine. The kit comes with some fixings, various screws and washers and so forth, but some of these were not the correct length. Obviously I could have cut some of these down, but I've got lots of 5mm cap head screws anyway, so I used a couple of stainless steel ones in here of the right size to attach the scale to these mounting blocks. Well, that's a bit of a stage further. I've still obviously got quite a lot to do. These brackets that came with the kit, when I'm lucky I have managed to use them. The kit came with one with these threaded holes in. That's the part that I cut off the back, and obviously had to adjust the size of this one so that it fits right underneath the base of the mill itself. But you know, this bracket may be useful. I think need to use a spacer under here as well, so I could very well use that to give me the right sort of spacing. But I think by setting this up on the bench here, this is going to make it very much easier to do, because the very cramped space you have underneath the table of the milling machine is very difficult to try and set this up in that position. Here I've got plenty of room to make all the necessary adjustments. But anyway, I've got to get on with it now, so I'll come back to you with more of the process as it goes ahead. The next stage will be mounting the scale to the bed of the mill. The scale's already mounted on 2 plates here to attach it to the mill at each end, and I've also made a plate to attach to the reader, so that will come up behind the scale, and the top of this will attach to the bed of the mill. So that will mount into here to give me more room and more sort of access to drilling the holes and tapping and everything else. I've taken the hand wheel off the mill just to give me a bit more room. I have actually already drilled and tapped the holes here, and there's simply a matter of lining the scale up, clamping it all in place, and then just using a punch to pop through the holes there and mark out the positions. Again, drilling was quite hard because this cast iron is very hard on this machine, so I used a mains operated drill for drilling this out. I centre drilled first, and then drilled out with a cobalt drill, which cut through very easily, and then tapped the holes with some new high-speed taps that I bought. So that will line up. I have already mounted this on once, just to check that all the screws line up, which they do, and I did tram across the top of the scale here just to see how level it is. I mean, I've got it pretty good, but obviously once this is all assembled onto the mill, I will then retram it again. So what I wanted to do was get this as near as possible to start with, because what I have to do next is drill some holes in this back plate, so this all got to come off. The back plate's got to come off, so I can drill a couple of holes in here. I'll drill them slightly oversized, so there's a bit of wiggle room on these as well, so that if I need to make some small adjustments, and when the adjustments are going to be very, very small, because I checked this and got this within about 0.02. So once I've drilled the holes here, I can then mark the position of those onto the bed of the mill, and then obviously drill and tap, and then attach that part. So that will sort of pretty much finalise the assembly of the scale onto the mill. One thing that is going to be a bit of a problem is mounting the guard, because the guard has a lip along here, which is normally used to attach the guard over the scale, and I would normally have mounted it onto these plates here. But this is obviously going to get in the way, and I thought, well, the solution to this is basically, so that I still have part of the lip to mount this on, is just to cut this sort of central section out. So I just leave a bit this at both ends to mount onto these plates, and that's going to work fine. I don't really think there's going to be any problem there. I did wonder whether I needed, like, the Z-axis to reduce the height of this, but it's not going to be necessary, because there's nothing that's going to get in the way of the side of the guard here. To keep the reader in place, I fabricated a little clamp. I've got 2 bits of cardboard between the scale and the reader, and which I've seen a lot of people recommend that you do this, and the clamp just holds that firmly in position. It's got a clamp on with a screw here. I've put some copper shims underneath so that it doesn't mark the top of the scale, and that I can leave that in place until it's all assembled, and then just release that and pull it off. So that's it basically. So the next stage will be drilling holes in here, and then marking the positions for the bed of the mill. And I think perhaps one more session in the workshop another day, and I'll have got this sorted, I hope. And then on to the X-axis. I mean, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. I've got these castings that I can mount the scales onto. I'll need to put spacers on here as well, so that I can have a plate mounted sort of down the back of the scale. Of course, on this one, different to here, it's the reader that's moving backwards and forwards. The scale stays in position, but on this one, the scale will move and the reader will stay in position. There are, you can't see them, but there are 3 tapped holes in here already along the back. They're the holes which hold the swarf guard across here. And when I've removed all of those guards, these guards off the back, originally it had the sort of concertina type bellows type guards, but after I got the mill, I think within about a couple of weeks they fell apart. So I just bought some leatherette material and just made up a guard to go in here. So I'll have to sort of think really hard about this, on how to mount the reader on, and have somewhere to mount the these covers as well. I'm sure I can figure out a way of doing that. So there we are. That's as far as I've got on this little section at the moment. So it's on to the next bit. Along the way, installing the Y-axis, obviously going to run into a few problems. The plate that are mounted onto the reader, which runs up behind the scale, is attached to the bed of the mill with a couple of screws here. The plate did originally extend a bit further along, but what I discovered was once I'd attached this, it obviously pulled the plate sort of closer to the mount here, and when I wound the Y-axis along, the end of this plate was actually hitting on the base of the column, because the base of the column actually overlaps slightly onto the base of the mill. So I had to dismantle it all again and cut a section of this plate away so that it would clear this part here to ride along. I then clocked up the scale here. I used a good dial indicator here, and I clocked it up using the bed of the mill here as the reference, and then dropped this down onto the top of the scale and sort of ran it up and down, then making sort of minor adjustments to get it absolutely trimmed in. The next thing to do, basically, well, I mean, this is basically complete now. The next thing to do was to mount the chip guard on. I didn't know if I'd need to make any modifications to this, but indeed I did. If the top of the mill here is moved right over to the right hand side, it brings this casting obviously closer to the scale, and because of the shape of the hand wheel, it meant that the back of the hand wheel was hitting on the side of the scale. It's obviously not going to be used that far over all the time, but I thought as I'm doing this, I might as well as make sure it's going to work for all situations, because I don't always have the milling vise in the centre of the bed here. Sometimes I do move this around so that I can always equalise any wear to the mill. So sometimes the vise I've got mounted further along, and I use this end for things like a sort of rotary table, angle plates, and so forth. So to enable me to attach the chip guard, I cut. It has this lip here, which normally does run all the way along the guard. I cut the middle section out, just leaving a piece at each end to attach to these blocks at each end of the scale. I discovered that the chip guard was actually too wide here, so I cut, like I had to do with the Z-axis. I cut this down. You can see on the inside here, it was cut through and then overlapped, just to make this narrower so that it fits nicely into place, and the hand wheel will now fit over, and there's no interference from the hand wheel at all. So the situations where the bed of the mill is being moved right over, I'm not going to have a problem here at all. One thing I did mean to mention earlier is that when I installed the Z-axis, I was lucky in that the column didn't appear to have any draft angle to it, so it made fitting the scale very, very easy. And I wanted to check also that there was no draft angle on the base of the mill here, so I used a set square to go along putting the set square on the machine surfaces here down onto the base of the milling machine, and luckily there's no draft angle there either. I was very pleased about that. I don't know why that is, whether this particular one, some parts of it are machined or not. I don't know. That they're, whether they, when they're machining the top of the machine here, whether they machine the sides or not, I've no idea, or whether it's the particular type of casting method they use. Where this base here joins up to this sort of side section here, there is obviously a fillet along the back here. So these plates I had to cut right in that bottom corner, a little chamfer on there, so that these blocks fit comfortably in place. But everything went, reasonably well. There were obviously a number of problems to solve along the way, but that's all part of the fun and part of the challenge of doing it, I guess. Well, I'm going to call the job finished now. Just got to screw that chip guard into place. Obviously, I've got a few other things to do as well. I've got to refit the chip covers here and here, because the next scale I've got to do is the X-axis, and I will need to machine up some parts for the installation. And of course, I've got to use the milling machine to do it. I've only got the one milling machine, so I've not only got to fit the scales onto it, I've got to also use the machine for machining out the parts and drilling all the various holes where required. But that's one thing you've just really got to sort of deal with. I will sort of later produce hopefully another video when the X-axis is completed as well, just to show you that, and any problems I came across in doing that as well. Anyway, I'm going to call that a job finished. Obviously, the next thing to do is to carry out some tests on it to make sure everything is running accurately, and that I've hopefully done the job correctly. If not, if there are any problems on this, the Z-axis scale was fine. If the Y-axis have any problems there, obviously I'll mention that in another video along the way, just to let you know. Anyway, thank you for joining me in the workshop, and thank you again to all the subscribers to the channel, and the lovely comments that I've been receiving during the videos I've been putting up, and all the helpful advice I've been getting. Anyway, thank you very much indeed, and bye-bye for now.